Okay, so what could a sacred figure from the Lakota tradition possibly have in common with, the ultimate symbol of the American Republic? It seems like an impossible comparison, right? But today, we're going to dive into this really surprising structural parallel between two figures who seem like they're from completely different universes.
So on one side, you've got White Buffalo Calf Woman, this deeply sacred figure from Lakota tradition. And on the other, Lady Liberty. I mean, you can't get more quintessentially American than that. They just seem worlds apart. But, and this is the big question, what if they actually serve the exact same purpose for their people?
And that's the central thesis from the source material we're looking at. The claim is that they occupy the exact same civilizational position. I know, it's a bold statement. So let's spend the next few minutes unpacking exactly what that means.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the parallel itself. Then we'll get into this really key concept called covenant architecture. After that, we'll wrestle with the big question. Is this just a coincidence, some kind of universal archetype, or is it something deeper? And finally, we'll talk about why any of this actually matters right now.
All right, so let's jump right into the core thesis, because honestly, when you lay them out, the parallels are pretty striking.
Okay, so check this out. Both figures show up at a moment of total civilizational fracture. You've got White Buffalo Calf Woman appearing during a time of chaos for the Lakota, and Lady Liberty is born out of the chaos of a revolution. And here's the thing, they both establish unity, but not through force, not through a king or an army. They do it by connecting their people to a higher transcendent order. And in both cases, it's a feminine figure who is the bearer of this law and the ultimate symbol of freedom.
Now, to really understand just how deep this parallel goes, we have to get our heads around this key idea from the source material. It's called covenant architecture.
So, what is that? Well, it's not just about laws written down on some piece of paper. The best way to think about it is like the invisible operating system that holds a whole civilization together, It's the shared symbols, the obligations, the beliefs that connect everybody to a moral authority that's way bigger than any one king or president.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how this blueprint maps across both traditions. The source argues that the sacred pipe, well, it serves the same function as the Declaration of Independence. It's the covenant instrument. The sacred rights that White Buffalo Calf Woman establishes, that's the infrastructure for unity, kind of like the Constitution. And the White Buffalo Calf itself becomes the symbol of freedom, just like the American buffalo would later become, you see? The forms are totally different, but the deep function, it's the same.
Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. The skeptic in me is thinking it too. Is this really some deep, meaningful connection, or is it just a big coincidence? Well, the analysis actually tackles this question head-on.
This really is the central puzzle, right? Are we just looking at a coincidence or maybe a universal archetype, a pattern that just pops up in cultures all over the world? Or is it something more specific, something the source calls prophetic fulfillment?
And look, to be fair, the archetype argument is a really strong one. I mean, the whole idea of a feminine figure who brings wisdom and law, that's not new at all. You see it with Sophia in Greek philosophy, Ma'at in ancient Egypt, Athena for the Athenians, and of course Libertas in Rome, which is literally where we get Lady Liberty from. So yeah, it's a totally fair question to ask, is this just another example of that same old pattern?
But this is where the analysis pushes back. The argument is that this parallel is way too specific, way too detailed to just be a generic archetype. Instead, it makes the case for something it calls structural fulfillment.
So this is the heart of the counter-argument. The claim here isn't about a simple coincidence. It's about a very specific prophetic pattern being, inhabited or fulfilled by a historical event that comes later. And this whole case is built on three key pillars.
Okay, so pillar number one. The Lakota tradition itself is prophetic. White Buffalo Calf Woman explicitly promises to return one day, which signals a renewal of the covenant. Pillar number two. The American founders were, and this is important, consciously working with covenant theology. They were steeped in the idea that a nation is a sacred agreement with a higher power. And pillar number three, and this is the wild one, the actual history of the American buffalo physically plays out this entire cycle of covenant, violation, and renewal.
And you can see this cycle so clearly in the real-world story of the buffalo. Step 1. Establishment. The buffalo becomes this powerful symbol of American liberty and the untamed frontier. Step 2. Violation. The herds are almost completely exterminated, a physical, brutal act of breaking that covenant. And then step 3. Renewal. The buffalo is brought back from the brink of extinction and is officially named the national mammal in 2016. So the crucial takeaway here is that, according to this analysis, this isn't just a nice conservation story. This three-act drama, establishment, violation, and renewal, is the exact pattern of covenant theology playing out in history with a real physical animal. It's theology written into historical events.
Okay, so what? Why does any of this matter today? I mean, it's a fascinating historical parallel, but what's the point? Well, this brings us to our final section, and it's really the ultimate stake of this whole argument. The source brings up this final concept it calls the iron and clay architecture. Think of it this way. The iron is state power. It's strong, it's coercive, it's unyielding. The clay is human society. It's organic, fragile, alive. And in any civilization, these two things get fused together. In that fusion, it forces every society to make a fundamental choice.
And here are the two paths, the two choices. On the one hand, you have covenant under higher law. This is where state power, the iron, agrees to submit itself to a higher moral law. On the other hand, you have what the source calls state worship or beast logic. This is where the state becomes its own god. It demands total worship and decides for itself what is real and what is true. This is the fork in the road that every single civilization eventually comes to.
And this is where our two figures, White Buffalo Calf Woman and Lady Liberty, come right back into the picture. The analysis sees them as guides, standing right at that fork in the road. They aren't offering to get rid of state power. That's the iron. It's always there. Instead, they offer a way to mediate it, to bind that raw power to a higher authority and steer the entire civilization away from tyranny and towards real, genuine liberty.
Which brings us to this final, really powerful claim. The buffalo. It isn't just a metaphor. It's physical, actual reality. The fact that it was almost wiped out and the fact that it was brought back, that serves as a tangible, living verdict on the state of the covenant. Think about it. You can't fake a herd of buffalo. Their actual fate is the physical witness to whether a nation's ideals are the real deal or just a hollow promise.
So, we're going to end where the source material leaves us, with a pretty provocative question. If the buffalo really is the witness, what is it telling us today? Is the covenant real? Is it alive and breathing, just like those restored herds? Or is it hollow? That's definitely something to think about.